And stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Welcome to Union City's Community Schools Board meeting. Our meeting agenda is available for you to follow. The expectation for our board meeting is to follow this agenda closely. We operate under the Open Meetings Act and utilize Robert's Rules of Order to govern our discussion and decision-making process. There is an opportunity for public comment during our set agenda. We welcome the public to express their opinions during this time of our agenda. If there are questions about the agenda or the board meeting process, please seek out one of the board members for clarification. Do we have any addition or deletion of items to the agenda? All right, we will move on to our first public comment time. This is the section of the meeting in which the public may make comments or share their opinions about items on the agenda. We ask you to limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes per person to allow others the opportunity to speak. This is an opportunity for the board to listen to your concerns. It is not board practice to act on the concerns voiced during this meeting to allow for the board to do further research. Do we have any public comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to our first action item. Board action is required to adjourn to a closed session for the purpose of considering a long-term suspension of a student per Section 8A of the Open Meetings Act. I will entertain a motion for the same.
So moved.
Support. Discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We're going to go into closed session, so if you don't mind stepping out at this time, and we'll let you know when we go back into open session.
All right, back online.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to go back into open session.
So moved.
Support. Discussion? We'll go back into, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We'll go back into open session. Board action is required to suspend a high school student per the recommendation of Amber Case, high school principal. I would entertain a motion for that.
I'd like to make a motion for the long-term suspension of the student through the remainder of the school year with the opportunity to repetition for enrollment in August of 2025. Support.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We'll move on now to application for preliminary qualifications of bond resolution. In order to do this, do we need to include everything that is in this section of our agenda, or?
Yes, that's the resolution that has to be passed.
Okay.
It's actually located on page 2 of the document
Yes, I
that
saw
you
that.
had. So you don't need to restate it all. All you need to do is have somebody make a motion to pass that resolution as stated.
Okay, all right. Then I would entertain a motion for a resolution that is as stated both in our agenda and in our packet.
So moved.
Support.
Discussion?
Ignorant question. When you sign up for a bond, the interest is locked in from now until it's done. There's no potential to refinance, etc.
No, you can refinance.
Oh, you can.
Yeah, you can, if the market gets better, you can decide to pay it off and refinance with a different bond rate.
So if the interest rate drops in 5 years, we could do that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a comment. It doesn't matter what, but the amount of money to just get the bond paid for, like the whoever takes the information and sells the bond, I need to get into that line of work because that's crazy.
That's all the different fees that are involved with all the different people that do the work. Yeah.
And I wish that we had a piggy bank because we have to pay a lot of interest.
You have to remember there are 4 different bond series there, so there will be 4 sales. Each one has its own fees associated. But you do that so that you're not paying, I mean, you need money up front to start things, and you don't really need to borrow all that money and then pay interest on it when you're not spending it. So, but it does mean that each one costs additional money to prepare and sell and so on.
And I'm sorry, it's a 77-page document, but can we delay some of those if we need to? And we approve them, but do we have to get the second bond regardless if we start the construction on time, or how does that work? You know, like I don't want to continue to pay interest if we haven't done anything yet. Because there's a schedule, right? So is that schedule set in stone, or can that?
No, that's just the planned schedule for how we're going to proceed. It's all about what is planned, and it goes to the state because we're going through the state's credit rating in order to get these bonds. And so because of that, it has to go through this process of approval by the state before the board puts it on the ballot. If we weren't going through them, if we were using simply our own credit rating, we wouldn't get as good an interest rate, but we wouldn't have to go through this whole process to this extent.
Any other questions or comments? No? All right. Kelly, this is a resolution, so you get to call the roll.
Okay. Steele,
Yes.
Labar,
Yes.
Gauchi,
Here.
Yaki,
Yes.
Arlt,
Yes.
Herman.
Yes. All right. Our next item on our agenda is successor superintendent interview, and we now will interview Mr. Patrick McCurr. And so if you'd like to be front and center, sir.
We refer to him as the candidate or Patrick or Mr. McCurr.
What would you prefer?
I've been called much worse than all those names, so whatever you'd like is fine.
Kelly asked me if I wanted a different setup for the meeting. I said I just moved my chair forward because that's what all of you guys had to do when you interviewed. So
Thank you.
I figured I'd go through that awkward setting as well. I believe you guys already have my resume and letters of recommendation. There's just a few other things I might touch on depending on how I answer the questions.
Sure.
I want to include some additional pieces for you.
Okay, great. Well, as you know, we have a list of questions that we shared with you. And what we'll do is we'll each take a turn answering a question. There's 14 questions, and while normally there are 7 of us here, with only 6 of us here, a couple of us will ask you more than 2. All right? So if you all feel okay about it, I thought perhaps we would start on one side and go around to the other, or I can start first. Which would you prefer? Doesn't matter. Okay? Jen, would you mind starting?
Sure. Good evening. How would you describe your leadership style, and how do you see it evolving as you transition from Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Assessment to Superintendent?
So I think my leadership style kind of comprises of 2 different pieces. The first piece being like the relationship builder and the team builder piece. I think I try to do a lot of that currently in my role right now, and I don't anticipate that changing. A lot of that is a result of just visibility in the schools and around the district. Getting to all the buildings every week, different times, seeing the different work that people are doing, be able to interact with them at different times to build those relationships, to build some team along the way. Whether it's initiatives we're doing now through curriculum and instruction practices that we're trying to accomplish, or larger scale things that we're trying to do as a district. I think that's one piece that would stay the same. The second piece that will change its scope a little bit will be the kind of conceptualizer, the big operational view. I think in leadership you had to have that view of whether you're leading just a curriculum instruction and assessment piece or an entire district. You have to go see the larger picture a lot of the time. It becomes very easy to be very narrowly focused. So sometimes being able to step back and see the larger picture, I think is something I'm very good at. I anticipate that also being able to remain consistent. Obviously the scope of that changes a little bit from the very narrow one that I'm on now as opposed to a much broader one. But the idea of being able to step back and see all the different effects that are going to happen downstream based on a decision that you're making in the current moment. I included in that little handout I had for you, there's a thing from Human X Ventures. They're based out of Kalamazoo in Omaha, Nebraska. They work with a lot of sports teams and schools and leadership development, and they have what they call Talent 12. So I worked with them, and those they identified as my top 12 leadership characteristics. So you can kind of see that what I spoke to, that I view myself, is also represented there. It was like an hour-long questionnaire that I filled out for them, where they put you in different situations. How would you respond if this were the case? What actions would you take if presented at this situation? So that's a little bit more insight into who I am as a leader as well, based off of that one assessment.
Very good.
I'll call you Patrick too.
Perfect.
Patrick, what is your long-term vision for this district, and what immediate priorities will you focus on in your first year as superintendent?
So I found that question to be a little bit difficult because the nature of this role, knowing when your first year superintendent is going to be, is up in the air. Not knowing if it's a year from now, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, in the middle of the school year, or the start of the school year. So I found that piece to be a little challenging. But the goal itself, I think, is very simple. I want us to be like a model school district, rural, smaller community school district that people are coming to visit. I want people to be asking, how are they doing it at Union City? We have a similar population, or a similar size that we have, or similar setting, but they're getting these results. They're achieving this, or they're able to offer these other programs that we can't. I want people coming in and touring all of our buildings and seeing they're accomplishing these great things there. What are they doing? What's the secret sauce over there that they're doing? And we're starting to get there a little bit. We had mid-school math come out and film a few of our teachers a year and a half ago now, as we're going through the implementation of that. And I think just having more opportunities for us to showcase what we're doing here will help us in gaining some confidence, as well as we are doing good work here, and that we can do great things here, and other people should be able to come see that, would be my goal for the district.
Thank you.
I'm writing down secret sauce. Okay, Patrick, glad you're here this evening. How do you plan to ensure continuity and stability during the transition period while also introducing new initiatives?
So I think this process alone goes a long ways to helping the transition process. I think if I were to be applying for a superintendent job in some other district, and being like one day one superintendent, the next day someone else, it's going to be a much more stark difference in what that transition looks like. but the nature of this process I think allows me to see some different aspects than what I'm currently able to see, whether it be working with the facilities or the food or the transportation department that typically wouldn't be in my area of work right now. This would provide me the opportunity to ease that transition to make it more smooth, as I wouldn't have as steep of a learning curve in entering the position of superintendent. I have an idea of kind of what's happening in the district beyond just the academic world of the districts. I think that would go a long ways to ensuring some continuity there. And then as far as new initiatives, I think anything that we're trying to do as a district, we got to be working towards a singular goal or towards our mission and vision. So the idea of educating and preparing each child for their future. Like, if new initiatives are working towards that, then those are the type of initiatives that we want to be getting started. If we have rationale and logic behind it, it might be an off-the-wall thing we're going to try, but if it's going to help us attempt to educate and prepare students, those are the type of things that we want to be doing with some new initiatives. Not just doing new initiatives for the sake of trying something new, but are we working towards achieving our mission and our vision, or the goals that we've set as a district? Any new initiative would be working towards those things, would be my hope.
Great, thank you.
Good evening, thanks for coming tonight. Given your background in curriculum and instruction, how will you ensure continued academic improvement while balancing the operational responsibilities of a superintendent?
Yeah, so definitely a lot of new responsibilities, and I think Chris has demonstrated great skill in being able to kind of change his role while also keeping some of his strengths. He still does a lot of our tech work in terms of Power School and some of the aspects of that, while giving Grant a great opportunity to grow into the rest of the tech role that he has currently. So I've kind of looked at that as a model of what things would I want to keep and what things would maybe shift to others, or how can we alter some roles potentially to accommodate some of those things to allow me to enter into different parts that Chris currently does that would have to be filled. So I think that's one piece of it. And then additionally, the background in curriculum instruction, when I started this role, no one had been in this position for a while, been several years. So it kind of gave me the opportunity to clean slate to establish some practices and some norms that we have. For example, we didn't have a schedule in which we reviewed our curriculum. So now we have a curriculum review schedule, I think, for 2040. So we have it planned out, like every year what we're going to evaluate, not necessarily to make a change, but to see is it meeting the needs of our students. Like, we have some schedules in place for that. We went through an audit with our English language learning students that the entire state had to go through for our Title III funds to go through that. We had to create a handbook which outlined the process. So as soon as they enroll in our district, what does it look like to support them throughout their time here? And I share that to say that we've started to create systems that hopefully would allow me to take a step back from it a little bit and not to be the leading person to do it, because we hopefully have systems in place that will allow others to continue that work, as it's now in one place, one location, the idea of the goals and the work that we want to do. And it's no longer up to myself or a team of people that I'm working with to create it new every single time. So hopefully the system's there that we can continue working on, whether that means strengthening grade level teams in the elementary school or departments in the middle school and high school to allow them to take on some of that curriculum and instructional lead, or creating maybe a team within the district to do that, but allowing them to maybe steer some of that, with me still wanting to sit in on it and be a part of it, but not necessarily having to be the only figure doing that.
Thank you.
Evening, Patrick. How do you plan to address achievement gaps and ensure that all students, regardless of background, have equitable opportunities for success?
So that's something I'm very passionate about. I think all of our students deserve the public education to benefit them as best they can. No matter what you come from in life, where you've been before, you're here now in Union City, and we need to do everything we can to educate you as one of our students. And that goes beyond just looking at achievement gaps we can see through standardized test scores. That's one data point for us, but there's a lot of other pieces that we look at as well. We use a system called Panorama. It's nice in the sense it allows us to see a lot of different data points for a student in one location. We can see academics, we can see behavior, attendance, we can survey them to determine kind of where are they with their own personal development skills. So one example of that is I was looking at that with the high school continuous improvement team 2 weeks ago, maybe 3 weeks ago now. Spring breaks kind of got me turned around a little bit, but we noticed that the entire district-wide was very low in terms of self-efficacy. So how can we help our students gain those skills where they can now think they can do difficult things, be willing to take on hard tasks, and be confident in what they're doing? So just trying to use multiple data points beyond just one thing to help us close achievement gaps. Understanding that achievement gaps aren't just closed through more instruction, more assessment, and more curriculum. There's a lot of other pieces that need to go into it. So really viewing them as an entire student and trying to provide supports in multiple different ways for them.
Thank you.
Good evening again. What strategies will you use to assess and improve student performance beyond standardized test scores?
So I think my last answer probably got to a
Okay,
few of those
so-
different pieces. Sorry to spoil your question for you, but I mean it when I say that we need to do a lot for a lot of our students. It's not just the instructional piece, the curriculum piece that we need to do. I mean, our counselors and our principals, as well as our teachers, do a fantastic job of meeting the needs of our students in their classrooms, and that helps us to close any achievement gap that we have for them. It helps us meet them where they are so they can be successful here and hopefully be successful when they leave here as a result of that. Not only can they sit down in a classroom and learn challenging material and internalize it and take it out into the world with them, but they can better understand who they are, their skills that they have, their abilities to interact with people who maybe they've never had to interact with before, their ability to seek out answers when they're struggling with something are things we want to be able to provide them support with.
Okay, back over here. How do you plan to engage with teachers, parents, and community members to build trust and maintain transparency in decision making?
Yeah, there's a lot of big decisions that have to be made as a superintendent of working with the school board as well. And I think transparency and communication is very important in that. I believe I'm a very good communicator. I try to communicate in a variety of different ways. In the handout I gave you a picture of a little virtual office of me in there. I provide that to our teachers. It's one link. It's actually a Google slideshow. It's just one slide. You can click on everything in there. So teachers can go to there to find everything they need if they're working on department meetings, if they missed their monthly newsletter. It's one place for them to go to kind of see where they're at. So it provides them one place they can go to find a lot of information about work that we're doing. Additionally, you see there's like things behind me, like posters with the UC logo on it, and I included that golf card in there as well, I believe. That was one way I was trying to communicate where we are currently at with some initiatives that we had in our district. I knew we had a lot of teachers who also coach, so I kind of chose a sports theme with it to communicate that. As we got closer to having curriculum maps created, priority standards identified, that UC logo began to fill up. So having simple ways to communicate and show what's happening in like real time, I think is very beneficial. And that wasn't quite real time, that was like monthly or bi-monthly. I went through it, I was editing it. But there's updates there, they knew they could look there to kind of see where they're at. So I think those communicated pieces are nice to have as well. They're kind of more static or passive, as well as more actionable ones like we see with the Charger Press. That goes out quarterly. We know from a recent survey we did about the bond that most of our families find out information about the school from Charger Press, but majority of it is Facebook. So those have to be two huge avenues we have to use to our advantage to communicate everything that happens here. And our principals currently do a great job in communicating a lot of things on Facebook for their individual buildings, but the district has to do just as much of that as well. I also think what Chris has started with the podcast is a great way to maybe start a secondary line of communication, whether we expand that a little bit and that comes out 3 or 4 times a year as well, even if it reiterates a lot of the stuff that's in the Charger Press. It communicates a little different medium so people can access it in a different way, or maybe as they're driving to work as opposed to sitting down and having to read something, but adding some sort of secondary piece in there to try and just meet people where they're understanding that the way I intake information is different than the way you do and the way that you do as well. So trying to provide those different ways for people to interact with the school. What are we doing here? Why are we doing these things? Kind of what's next for us. I think is super beneficial.
I have 2 questions. What happens when I click on your forehead in this thing?
I don't think anything, thankfully. I don't think anything.
Update that then.
Your
I'll
thoughts?
take it to your photo on the website. It'll link right to there.
Michigan schools face various challenges, including funding constraints and changing state mandates. How will you communicate and collaborate with the school board and other stakeholders to navigate these challenges?
So this weekend, as I was reflecting on this question, I thought it was actually quite timely. And it's going to seem sad in a second, but I promise you it's a good story. My grandfather passed away in August. He worked for the Department of Education and the financial arm of the department for a long time. I never really understood what his job was because he retired when I was very young. When he passed away, we were going through stuff in his house, and there was a thing when he testified in front of Congress in 1971 about the state of education, the funding for education in the state of Michigan, and how different schools had inequity and had a lot of inequalities in how they were funded, and that led to achievement gaps in schools. And that was in 1971. So here we are over 50 years later, and we're still having questions about the state of Michigan changing funding and how can we work with that. So on one hand, it's disheartening. But on the other hand, it's important to understand it's not changing anytime soon. Even in the last 5 years, it's changed a lot since COVID hit. There's been a lot more of a shift towards like individual grants being pushed out as opposed to just general education funds being pushed out to districts. So trying to navigate what that looks like. I've been able to work with Sarah a lot on a lot of those different pieces for the academic side of stuff that we've been doing, and that's been challenging at times. But one thing we've been trying to implement that we've actually utilized quite a bit this semester so far is we're trying to create basically a wish list for every department or grade level. So we've known there's been a lot of focus on literacy in elementary school. So we worked with those teachers to create basically a wish list of like, if we have funds available, what can these funds go to and be productive at? So we had some funds available for that were tailored for instructional resources. So over break, we ordered several $1,000s worth of resources for the elementary school. And it wasn't a result of us being like, oh, here's these grant funds that we have, now how can we use them? It was we kind of had an idea for how we were going to use grant funds as they were made available. So I think pre-planning as best we can for when stuff like this might come up, and trying our best to understand what is the state leaning towards for these different things. Like we've known in the past previously, like the electric buses, for example. That was a big initiative from the state. So how can we maybe position ourselves to apply for those funds if they do become available again next year? Now that might be in turmoil now with the change in administration, change in policies, that might no longer be something, but there'll be some other things. So trying to be aware of where the state is going with their budget so we can be prepared when they give us the funds to utilize them as best we can quickly, and we're not kind of behind the 8 ball trying to scramble. So trying to be as proactive as we can in planning for those situations. And we're going to miss on some, like we might prep a wish list for something that we think we're going to get funds for, and we're not going to get it, and they might release a grant that's totally off the wall that we didn't anticipate that we'll end up scrambling around for. But the best we can be prepared for those funds when we have them, we can spend them correctly for our students and staff, I think is the important piece of it. Every decision we have to be making is to educate and prepare our students, and our staff is a big piece in doing that. So those funds have to be working towards that goal and that mission all the time.
Great. All right. How will you handle conflict resolution among district stakeholders, including disagreements among staff, parents, and the community?
It'd be very naive of me to think that we'd have a period of time without conflict, so very much aware that would be something that we'll come across multiple times, unfortunately. But I think a lot of what we can do is just seek to understand where people are coming from with their perspectives, going in and really trying to clearly listen to them, listen with empathy about what experience that they have, how do they view the situation. I think also having clear lines of communication for that. I think we try our best to have, if it's a parent issue, did you talk to the teacher? Did you talk to the principal? I think it's like some natural progression steps of what that looks like. So it's not as scattershot as someone coming in and just trying to work their way to whoever will give them the listening ear, who they think can make the change for them. But having a clear path, if it's an athletics thing, did you talk to the coach, the athletic director, what's that look like for you? So people can try and solve it at the root of the issue. And hopefully that happens earlier on as a result of that, and doesn't become a larger thing. I think the earlier we can identify the issue with the people directly involved, the easier it is to solve those when you are trying to come to some sort of common ground to solve a problem between two people. And some of it might be long-standing things that finally boil over. Other things might be very quick that happen. But I think if you use those like strategies to get there, they'll get you to a good spot. And then having some sort of process in place to be restorative afterwards. Like we found this common ground, like what happens next now? Not just leaving this, okay, we might have moved past this situation, but what's it going to look like for us either working together as colleagues going forward, but having some sort of restorative piece on the end as well.
Great, thank you.
What experience do you have with school financing and budgeting, and how will you ensure fiscal responsibility while prioritizing student and staff needs?
So most of my experience of that centers around grant funds. And typically those grant funds have a lot of restrictions and narrow the focus into how they're being used. And that's from my time in the classroom applying for grant funds that need to be used in certain ways for me to spend it, or district-wide ones we've gotten for, like I shared, that literacy one for the elementary school is where most of mine centers around. And I think having a team of people working on it is fantastic. I really enjoy working with Sarah on that piece of it. I think she is extremely knowledgeable and very aware of everything the state's doing in terms of grant funds and how do we enter it in, how can we spend this money, what can't we spend this money on. So working closely with her, understanding she's been doing this now for I think 6 years. That she has a great base of knowledge on that, and understand that there's going to be a lot of learning for me in that piece as well, as far as outside of the academic grants, managing the larger scale budget, But I think a key piece of that is having to be very responsible with our funds as a district, maintaining a fund balance that allows us to accommodate any like unforeseen situation that might occur, while also trying to do everything we can to provide for our students and our staff. Trying to kind of toe that line of we have to be as responsible in every decision that we make, while also seeking to do great things here. It's probably a narrow line to walk, but it's one that we really have to try and aim for every single time, I believe.
Thank you.
How will you manage the transition from an instructional leadership role to overseeing operations, facilities, and district-wide administrative functions?
So I've talked to a lot of people who have made the switch to a superintendent, and a lot of them share that, even people who shift into principalships share that you're no longer like an academic lead for the district. You're no longer someone who can model as much as you would like or get down and coach as much as you would like, because you get pulled in a lot of different directions. So I think any way we can structure some sort of process for people to like take on some leadership in a variety of different roles, whether it be at the department level, at the grade level, or different things in buildings, across buildings that we do that allows them to take on some leadership in the curriculum instruction, I think does a lot of good for us, and empowering teachers to feel confident that they are professionals, they're extremely talented, they can do these things as well, and we're giving them the opportunities to do that, which I think is a fantastic thing that we need to encourage all of our teachers to continue to grow and seek, whether it's leadership or it's different ways that maybe they could help coach new teachers. I know I spoke with an elementary school teacher last week who expressed some interest in becoming a coach maybe eventually, and I shared that she wants to help me plan our new teacher cohort that we do for all our new teachers. That would be like a year-long process she could take on to help kind of lead them into what is it like to be a teacher, and then that kind of goes to the academic question that you answered of me shifting maybe out of that role a little bit by empowering some others in the district as well. We want all of our staff to continuously grow, just as we want our students to, but we need to have opportunities for them to do that. So that might be one way in which we can provide some avenues for them.
All right, thank you.
What strategies do you have for securing additional funding and grants to support district initiatives?
So that's been something that's been frustrating, I think, probably for the last 12 to 18 months for us in trying to secure some of these grant funds. And one of the things that's been most frustrating for me is when we see grant funds come out that specifically list districts and projects already in it that they've received it, even though it's supposed to be like a competitive application process, some of them already have it in it. So I've been proactive in that. 2 weeks ago, I went to Michigan State for a 2-day thing on education policy and what does that look like. So trying to put myself more in the world of what does it look like? How is this happening? How are some school districts able to do that? A lot of it is their representatives are very active in the schools and want to be able to take pride in doing that for their districts. Chris and I met with our representative last week over spring break. We sat down with her for probably a half hour, 45 minutes, and talked about why is this happening? Why are some districts able to get these things while we're not? Because I really do think that's a key piece of securing funds is really almost networking. It's reaching out to all these different people as best we can, trying to get Union City out there saying, if there's funds available, we would like funds. We'll utilize them well. We'll be responsible with them. They'll produce great outcomes. But if we don't have a seat at the table, we're never going to be someone who's included in those conversations. We're always going to be stuck competing with the rest of the state for those funds. And I'm not promising I'll get us written in it, but just the fact that we're trying to go out and be proactive and talk to the people who are working with the legislature with the budget. If we know the direction they're going, it makes it easier for us in terms of even planning some of those wish lists, like I've said. If we have an idea of where they're going, we can better position our budget in a place to know like the following year might look like this or might look like that. It'll just give us more insight into that.
How do you plan to support and develop principals, teachers, and staff to foster a strong district-wide leadership team?
So I think a leadership team is essential in this role. There's so many different directions you get pulled in. You need to have a great team with you. So working with Sarah, Kelly, and Lori in central office, but also working with the principals in every building, the secretaries in every building, the counselors in every building, and really trying to build as much of a team as we can there in all the different ways that we're being pulled. And then beyond just the school buildings, you have the food service, transportation facilities. Those are also critical pieces of our district that have to be included in a lot of these leadership decisions, because everything we do here, they are supporting us. Even if you look at our vision, the educating and preparing every student, if they weren't doing their job in food service or transportation, we don't have the opportunity to educate and prepare. So really working with everyone who is doing that, it has to be part of the leadership team in some facet. Doesn't mean we all have to sit down at the same time, but there has to be conversations with them about where are we going, what decisions are we making, how are we improving. I spoke a little bit about ways we can maybe strengthen some support for teachers in terms of some of the stuff that maybe I would transition out to that they could take on with the curriculum piece, with departments at the grade levels, and team-based at each school, working some of the curriculum pieces, so there's some opportunities for them to do that. One thing I know, when I stepped into this role, I knew I'd never been a principal before, so I was very concerned about any time I had to go talk to any of these principals in terms of offering as best support as I can. I think as a teacher, when I was in the classroom, I was a great support to principals in that sense. I was someone they could come to who they could ask me to talk to a student. They could ask me to try out a new piece of technology in the classroom, and I could do that for them. And I like to think that in this role, I supported principals in different ways as well to help them hopefully make their job a little bit easier. Some days I think I'm better at it than other days, but I've really tried to improve myself in that sense. I've gone through a lot of different trainings to become a coach. There's if you saw my resume, there's several there that I've gone through because I recognize I needed to have that. And coaching is not about providing the answers for people. It's about helping them get to the correct answer as best they can. And I think that's something to be critical in a job as superintendent, that if I'm working with our transportation department, she's been doing it a long time, much longer than I am. She's a much better understanding of it. But I think I can still sit down with her and be a thought partner and work through some things to try and find solutions to any problem that may arise. That's not just transportation, that's in our schools, that's food service, that's facilities as well. I think those same skills and conversations can be useful across any department in the district.
What steps will you take to maintain and enhance the district's culture while implementing necessary changes for growth and improvement?
So one thing that I think that I have a larger emphasis on than maybe Chris would have is I'm very much a believer in like goals and mission and vision. So as part of like new initiatives and things that we're doing and growth and improvement, I like being able to see those things and point to those things with rationales of why we're doing the things that we did. Why did we make the decisions for that? Like, how does this professional development of teachers contribute to this continuous improvement goal that we have? Tying those things together, being explicit about it, and really pointing to it. Or if we're sitting down and we're constructing one of those wish lists for a grant, it's like, now we're trying to weigh out, it's like, is this going to educate and prepare students? Maybe this helps 5 to 10 students. Maybe this one helps 40 to 50 students. So really being like mission-driven, goal-driven. And I think Chris does a lot of that naturally. I think that's how he views stuff, but he's not as explicit in his language around, this is to do this goal for us. This is to work towards our mission and vision. Even though the work is doing that, I think I'm someone who's much more explicit in doing that than he would. So I think in terms of implementing changes, there'd be a lot more conversations centered around, we're doing this because it's our goal to do this. We're doing this because it's achieving our vision that we've set out for our district. So I think any new initiative would be structured along those lines to really make sure we're all paddling the boat in the same direction on everything that we're doing, and that any new initiative wouldn't feel as if it's something that's out of left field, that it feels very much in line with what we're trying to accomplish here.
Great. Well, those are the end of our questions. Do you have anything else that you would like to share with us at this time?
I'm very humbled by the opportunity. I know the people who wrote me letters and recommendations spoke very highly of me. And it was kind of eye-opening for me to realize what they thought of me as an individual, thought that I could be successful in this. So it's very humbling for me because I view all of them as fantastic leaders in our district already. So I wanted to point out that they are unbelievable leaders as well, and this is an opportunity I have to do that, so I'm going to take that chance. And also on that first page I had there was some statistics about things we've done as a district since I've been here, like some test scores, but also some new things that we've tried. None of that would be possible without our teaching staff and their willingness to try new things. So I want to thank them as well for making some of those things that we've done possible, because one person can't do all those things on that list. It takes a great team to do that. And I'd be honored to have the opportunity to continue doing that work.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, at this time, I believe what we can do is we can have a motion, entertain a motion to decide upon whether Patrick McCurr would be our successor superintendent. So I would entertain a motion so we could get discussion on the floor.
I motion.
Board?
Discussion. No discussion?
I've got a lot, but I don't want
Oh,
Just
I was gonna say,
leaving the
it was
floor
like
open.
He was
Cricket
waiting
City over
patiently.
here, and no
I can
one
go
was
first
saying
if you,
anything.
I can go first if you want. doesn't matter.
Please go first.
So, what I'm about to say, would be more comfortable to do in a closed session, and I prefer to do it in a closed session for many reasons. One, because I tend to, my brain and my mouth sometimes don't always talk together, so I say things I wish I hadn't, but, it's just more comfortable and there's no issues that way, but at the same time, we're public people, it's a public meeting, we've been elected, so I think the public deserves to hear what we're thinking and, you know, as we chew through things, and so, I think that's important. And also, some of the things that I want to talk about briefly, I'm not doing to cause division or anything. I want to open up dialogue. You know, if there's something that I'm missing or something that someone has during public comment that they want to share that would shed more light on this because I'm not here every day, then great. That's really what the intent is to be open, transparent, and also to decide together and to discuss things. That's the point. I don't want to ever be on a board where it's like, yep, see you later. Nope, see you later. There's none of this. So, first thing I want to say, and I was thinking about this as I was sweeping the grade bin, so I should have taken notes on my arm or something, but I wasn't able to do that. But the letter that you wrote for your, I guess you called it a cover letter, whatever it was outstanding. It was arguably the best one I've ever read. It would be a good example to others in the district who are in a career class because it was very well done. And similarly, the letters of recommendation written by 3 individuals whose opinions I trust very much were excellent as well. And for those who didn't get to read them, they were very highly supportive of the candidate. And I appreciated them taking the time, and I think they meant it, and it means something to me to read it. So, and you know, I think the interview, I mean, it's always impressive to have someone answer questions logically and well without notes, or at least not reading from, you know, like this. I love the fact that you've been here for a few years, so you're a Charger, and I think to capitalize on someone who we have seen work here and who has interacted with people is, if we can do that, it's a win for everyone. But the way that I make decisions is I look at sometimes things I have concerns about, and I try to address those. And if I can get the answer to those, or if I can fill that concern, then I know that everything else is good. And no person is perfect. I would say that I'm impressed with what you've done so far and what you've said, and you know, the interactions with people here. So there's 2 minor concerns that I have that I just want to discuss. That, you know, and we're open meeting. So the first one is I appreciate the fact that you were I want to talk to her, but us, I guess. I appreciate the fact that Patrick was a teacher. I think it's important for a superintendent to have that experience, especially when he has to interact with teachers, and the teachers want to see that he knows at least a little bit about what they're going through. I think that's important. The concern that I would have is I like Patrick. He's a nice guy. He dresses well. He presents himself well. I think he's a good listener, but he hasn't really been challenged yet here in a difficult situation where a parent's upset or there's a major issue or a student, you know, discipline things, and so I haven't seen what he would do there, and so I don't know. It's an unknown. It doesn't mean that he couldn't do it, but I want to make sure that we have someone who's willing to not get angry, but to you know, make the decisions that are hard sometimes, but need to be made. So I appreciate the fact that he listens, but you also have to be that guy sometimes. So I'm not saying you can't. That's a concern because I haven't seen that from him. The second one is a little bit more, I'll say personal, but and I apologize. I should have told you I was discussing this. That wasn't. So please accept that apology, but I'm still going to say it. So we hired Patrick to be a curriculum director. That was his main job. He did other things, obviously, more than one, many things. Developed a mission, all of, you know, outside of what a curriculum director would normally do. But my wife and I had the opportunity to look into one of the curriculums that we had selected for science, and she and I both felt that it was subpar, very subpar. And so we had concerns, and I talked to Chris, and Chris said, go talk to Patrick. So I talked to Patrick, and he was fairly new. And we had some concerns, and in the end, I think he listened well. I think he cared, but the resolution wasn't what I was hoping, I guess. Now, that being said, a few things. One, my wife and I both have science degrees, so we feel pretty passionate about science and understanding, especially chemistry. My wife is basically a chemistry minor, and so at the time we were changing high school teachers in science, so we really didn't have, I would say, expertise in making the decision on the curriculum. But we felt like there was some things that were lacking. But the other thing that I've learned is that school is not the same as it was when I was in school. We don't use books anymore. We don't do other things that I think we probably should do. That's fine, it's my opinion. So it was my opinion that the curriculum wasn't very good for science, and I still believe that for high school, especially in the chemistry and the physics department. But I was also informed by Patrick and Mr. Katz that the state sets the standards, and the state says you can pick from these things, and so that's what we have to pick from. So it's not a knock on Patrick, because this is what we have to work with. So I'm not sure, but so those are my concerns. However, I've talked to more than one teacher who has said that Patrick has made the curriculum a lot better in multiple ways and has integrated things. And so, I don't want to say doggone it, but every time there's a concern, you seem to find a way to make it better. So I have evidence, people that I trust, that problem is not as big as I thought maybe it was, I guess. But I just wanted to share that because those are my two concerns. Other than that, I think it was Mr. Katz that said in his letter, you can't find a person that dislikes Patrick McCurd or thinks that he doesn't do a good job. So in the district,
Didn't call my brothers, I guess. So I appreciate that.
but
doesn't work.
that means a lot to me because we're not here every day, and if you're working with people and you're trying to convince them to do things or listening to them, and they're all like, it's very hard for me to go against that at all. But just wanted to open that dialogue up. But excellent job in the interview and all the work you've done. So thank you.
I do know that you going to the other buildings has a big impact on the staff. You may not notice it all the time, you may not know it, but I know from talking to, obviously my wife and then various other people, that's much appreciated, and they value that greatly. So I know you have a lot of support from that side of things too. So
I appreciate that you looked at everything as it's a well-oiled machine, the district. Every part is needed, every aspect's needed. So just hearing that from you means a lot.
I thought the entire interview process was great. The packet, the data, the letters from our administrators who we entrust our children's, educational future to, was great. I mean, I think that the beauty of this plan that we've put in place, and with the recommendation of Chris to have a successorship, I feel like I can't wait to see what you bring to the table next. So I'm looking forward to that.
Jen, did you have anything that you wanted to add?
I thought your interview was absolutely phenomenal. It was great. I would like to echo your concern on the hard times you may face. Like, we've not seen it before. How you will react or what will happen. Discipline in the school district is huge to me, and I think we are lacking, if I'm being completely honest. So I would like to see what we can do there. I think cell phones need to be eliminated completely. I'm putting the plug out there. Cell phones need to go away.
That would be kind of nice for the whole world to be.
I know, but in a
If
school
you want to be
setting,
honest about it.
yeah, in a school setting specifically, I think we really need to work on that project.
Well, as for what I have to say, I do want to say that I did see in your previous work that some of the things that you did do was work as a dean of students and assistant dean of students. So you do have some of that previous knowledge of working with unruly or troubled youth, and probably some work with parents as well.
Yep.
So you do have, I believe, some previous experience with that. We may not have needed to have that here at this point, but I think that that is something that definitely comes with more opportunity to have it. And the fact that you have some of it underneath your belt to begin with is a great base to start out with. I also want to say that I really appreciate the fact that while you are not a born and bred Charger, neither am I for that fact, you are someone that has become part of the community and has really worked to work into being a member of the community. And it's obvious that your coworkers, your administration, the people that you interact with all the time have no reservations about where you stand and the fact that you stand for this community and that you stand for the children in this community. And that is huge for me. If I saw people in the community going, that Patrick McCare is sketchy, we would have a different discussion, right? But the fact that you're here and you want to be even more of a leader within our community, that says a lot for you, and I want to commend you on that.
I think my wife laid a lot of good groundwork for me before I ever showed up.
Yes.
So I appreciate her for that.
Well, and I know your wife too, so
She's
and I've known
fantastic.
her for a really long time. So I take her as much into account as I do the letters of recommendations from the other people that spoke for you. So, you know, if Gabby says you're good, you're good.
She doesn't say it a lot, but when she does, I enjoy it.
I know that one.
I know she thinks it, right?
Hopefully, is she watching right now?
There's no way. She has our 2-year-old at home by herself all day, so
Oh, boy.
there's no watching board meetings. It's very tiring.
Yeah. All right. Well, if we do not have any other discussion that we'd like to take place, I'll call a vote. So all those in favor of having Patrick McCare be our, I want to make sure I get the wording right here.
Yeah, can we discuss what that means, just so we all understand?
Yes. Successor superintendent.
So, this is my understanding of how it works. So if we say yes, the majority of us say yes, then he would work alongside Chris and would learn and would prepare to take over for Chris, at which point Chris decides to retire. Okay.
Correct. Correct. So he's kind of in a dual role, technically, because he'd still be doing his old role, but under Chris's wing for more administrative type
Okay.
things.
And then I had some questions about contracts. I guess we could talk about that later, but so there would be, we would do this, and then next meeting we would have a contract that we would have to approve, or you know how that works.
I do not know how that works, but it's definitely something that we could ask Chris when he comes back in the room.
He's lurking.
Oh, there he is. You're lurking.
Well, I heard you were about to call a vote.
Yes, I was about to
walked
call a
back
vote.
this way.
I was working on calling
So
a vote.
weird listening to somebody interview for your job.
Well, the last guy, I had a question about the so if we approve this, then we have the next meeting we'd have a contract we'd have to approve. Is that how that
Yeah,
works?
our attorneys give me a sample language that would be added on to this contract. It'd be basically same contract he has now with additional language added to it. So I can bring that back at the next meeting.
Yeah, I was just curious how that worked out.
All right. So I will entertain a motion for Patrick becoming our successor superintendent.
We already had one.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
Oh,
just
we
a
have-
vote.
Oh, that's right, I did.
There's no more discussion.
Now it's just,
Now it's just a vote.
I'm discombobulated. All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm excited about it. Thank you very much.
Yes. You can come back in now, Chris, instead of eavesdropping at the door. All right. Anything you want to add to what we have been discussing or no?
It's been a whole.
Other than you'll bring contract at the next meeting maybe?
Yeah, I'll have the contract, for you at the next meeting, and I will just say that I'm really very pleased, because I think one of probably the top 5 things I've done since I've been here is hiring him, so I'm very pleased that you've done that.
Great. I look forward to working together.
Someone's the one.
I said in the top 5, I didn't say where.
All right, we will move on to our discussion item, the sinking fund. Information regarding our sinking fund millage.
Yes, so I have uploaded to your packet sinking fund budget updated for the next 8 years. One is if it's continued for at the 3 mill rate, what that will be, and another if we reduce the balance to or reduce it to a rate of 1.5 mils, or actually I think it was 1.48 because it's because of Headley it's 2.98 right now. So I just wanted the board to have some discussion about the idea of including with the bond proposal the stated intent of the board. Obviously the board has to vote every year on how many mills to levy. We do that sometime coming up in the future here before we get close to the time we actually collect the taxes. The board passes a resolution of how many mills to levy. You do not have to levy all of the mills that you're allowed to levy. The current sinking fund is, as I said, 2.98 mills, so the board can choose to levy all of that or a lower portion, and I want to know if you want to announce to the community the intention to lower that if the bond passes. We've talked about doing this before. The plan I've included there for you, which would lower it to 1.48, would do 2 things. It would mean that we could tell the community that it would be your intention to do that, and therefore their tax burden would only increase by 3.45 mils as opposed to the full 4.95 if you do lower that. It would take it down at one point, I believe, right about when we pay our last payment on the bleachers, we would have roughly about a little over $300,000 as a balance in the sinking fund at that point, which still gives us more than enough money to address our normal annual maintenance needs and some additional for any large thing that comes up. And then, of course, at that point, each year going on from there, it will, if we continue to levy 1.5, it will go back up again. I think until we hit, there's money in there to redo the high school parking lot. That's budgeted in. I think I have it budgeted in for the year after we start up in the school, after it's all the remodeling and everything. It'd be nice to have the parking lot done at the same time. I'm just not sure with construction whether that would work out, but it's in there to make sure all this entire parking lot is resurfaced. So, what are your thoughts?
I think it only makes sense to plan on reducing it. So the question is how much. I guess I have to look at what the number is, right? You know, is it 1.48, is it whatever, but I think it would be prudent for us to consider reducing the sinking fund if the bond passes. I just don't know how much.
Well, we're going to be
We would need to do it before.
putting together recording video, and they're already beginning to work on the different advertisements that sharing the factual information, and they need to know that now.
Well, I think personally,
'Cause time is what,
my thought is I think we should reduce it. I know I had concern, but we talked about it last meeting, how that works.
yeah, but it's not as low as it was last
Right,
time,
exactly.
because of the increased price. It doesn't
Correct.
go down as low like you're concerned about because of the solar farms.
Correct.
So it's a better situation than it was
Yes.
before.
And I think that we will have a better possibility of of passing a bond if we are also showing that we are being good stewards of our community's monies to say, we'd like this, but we don't want all of this, you know? So for me, I feel positive about lowering it to that. However, it does need to be, I think, very clear that if the bond doesn't pass, we will not be lowering it in some way. You know, we need to show we're not lowering it for fun, we're lowering it
No,
because
it would definitely be
we
stated.
need this to pass, and if it doesn't pass, we're not lowering
If
it.
if it doesn't pass, we will definitely need that and more.
Yes,
because
exactly.
it's not enough
Right,
to do the things we need to do, so.
right.
So, I'm sorry, it's not loading itself, but so the two options are 1.48, 2.98,
I can
and the
I got
1.48
kicked
still,
out.
that's the one that still gives us $330,000 plus a year.
Hamster wheel of death here.
See everything at
Just trying
home.
to-
Yeah, I'll bring my computer over to you there and you can.
It's kind of loading.
Do you have
I know.
where it's two options when you click here?
Yeah.
Yeah, but they don't,
You know
They
what,
don't
if you
load.
have a
Oh,
second,
both of them.
The PDFs.
No, no, there should be another thingy over here. So see how I have this?
Oh,
You don't
oh,
have both.
This
I don't have that either.
So if you click on that, it
So,
brings it up here.
Kelly, would you like to go get these?
You gonna print them?
I'm gonna print.
I can kind of see it anyway. Great.
I'm just gonna print them, then you can have them to take with you.
But, so, yeah, just to clarify, that $333,000 number that you gave us, which you feel is enough, is the smaller sinking fund remainder, it's 1.48.
Yes.
If we kept the 2.98 and the bond, we would go from 2.98 to what, 7 and some change, is that?
Something like that.
If you keep the bond, then that means our increase is 4.95 mils. And the balance currently budgeted at the end of the next 8 years would be $5 million. You know, that's with the projects we have already planned for sinking fund money. There would be a $5 million balance, and we really don't need that because the bond is doing many of the projects that we would have been doing. If you reduce it by 1.5 mils, then in the 27-28 year, after paying the last payment on the stadium project, we would have a balance of $322,000 in the sinking fund. And then the following year, collecting the full amount, the 1.48 mils again, and doing the high school parking lot as well, I'm estimating we would have about $340,000. And then the year after that, it would jump to 740, 1.2. The total at the end of the 8 years would be $1.5 million. So it will still be going up. And even at going down to 1.48 mils, you'd have 1.5 million in the sinking fund balance at the end of the 8 years. And that's with all the projects that we have currently planned for sinking fund, plus all the repairs and everything that will be done with the bond. And honestly, I think that is more than enough.
I know the proposals have contingencies for overages for construction costs, but I just fear that they're gonna be over our overages that we've planned for. So my thought is that we would maintain the 2.98 and have an additional construction budget.
And there's some contractual things we could do with that construction project contract and GMP. Typically, school projects are on GMP, so the guaranteed maximum price. So
Okay.
they take that into account, but usually there's a hefty contingency in there. But I'm sure Chris has dealt with this before, that there's ways that,
There's a very extensive contingency
Okay.
in there. And
I just think construction costs are gonna go through the roof in the next.
there's
during our
both
window of
contingency,
I'll escalate it.
there's a 10% contingency and a 10% for escalation. So there's essentially a 20% in there to cover changes. And then, of course, there's always, if push came to shove and you didn't have enough, you could remove things and do the project as it is and then come back. But honestly, my concern is if you don't make that commitment to reduce it,
Yeah.
will the bond pass? And you may not, you know, it's always nice to say, I wish I had all 8 mills, but
We're getting 15 million from the state, so.
aren't we? I hope you're right about that, but I haven't heard yet.
Thank you.
Drop 'em off at the Capitol.
And if the resolution would be for the life of the sinking fund, not yearly, right?
Thank you.
Okay, so you have, the board, that's one thing about it, is the board has to decide on an annual basis how much to levy, and the attorneys have told me there is no way for you to say, to make it ironclad that you are only going to levy this much for the next 8 years. And so if you, for instance, Brunson is doing a similar thing with theirs. If the bond passes, they're gonna lower theirs from 1.98 to 0.99, I believe. And if you look at their language when they advertise that, it's that the board intends to lower the sinking fund, because the board will have to make a decision every single year to do that. And, you know, some of you may not be on the board in, you know, 4 years, and at that point in time, the board might decide, well, we need to do this. Obviously, if an emergency came up, you'd still be able to do that, but I think what's important is, you know, if the board makes a commitment or tells the community we intend to do this, that those of you that I think that are on the board need to be able to firmly stand by that. But it is something that you can only state that you intend to do, and it has to be, the decision has to be made every year, and you're asking the community to trust you on that. It would be, at this point, it would be better if we didn't have a 10-year, you know, because like Bronson's, theirs is only 5 years, so they're only saying we intend to do it for the next, I think, 2 years or something, because then their 5 year will be done, and anything they do after that point, they'd have to get a renewal on. But for you, we have a 10-year sinking fund, so we have 8 more years of 3 mills.
If we're not maintaining 3 buildings full-time,
That will make it easier.
I think this amount of money should be enough.
We used to, when Marty started the process of passing these millages, the sinking fund millages, in order to update the building, so to speak, you know, to add on the different wings we did and so on. We had been having for many years a 1 mill sinking fund that was for maintenance. It was just kind of a regular annual thing all the way through the 80s and 90s. I remember that going on, and then he started the second sinking fund, which was for these projects. And we just continued to have 2 separate ones, a 1 mill that was for maintenance and the other was for the projects. And that 1 mill was always, you know, sufficient. And I think especially with the new solar farm out there, I even think 1 mill would be more than sufficient. I really think we only plan to spend roughly $60,000-$70,000, and then we have our projects, the things that we are going to use the money for, like parking lots. Those are really the 2 areas that we will utilize that regular money for. The types of projects we would otherwise use the money for are all in the bond. So I would actually, if it weren't for the fact that we need the balance to pay off the loan, I would probably be recommending you lower it down to 1 mil. I think that's more than enough money. So I have no problems at all lowering it down this far.
Do we need to do this as any type of a vote?
No.
We can just say that that's what we intend, that's what our intentions are, or whatever the language is.
It's just before
to our
you know, when
people doing that.
I've already received actually scripts from the company that they've already got written out, you know, based on our feedback. They've put this together for us to be recorded in video, and they're working on some of the graphics and things. I need to be able to tell them that you as a board I don't need you to make a vote on it. because no vote could be held, you could not be held, it wouldn't have any effect.
Right,
It wouldn't actually
right,
do anything, and I don't wanna give the wrong impression.
right.
But that all of you are, as board members are committing to,
Reduction.
if the bond passes, you're going to only levy 1.48. That's really what I'm looking for. And if you're all in agreement with that, I'm good. And I'll go ahead and say that the board intends to lower it.
Engage.
Is that good for everybody?
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's great.
Fantastic. That's what will be there.
Okay, Captain.
All right, Captain.
Alrighty. Is there anything else that you needed regarding that
No,
discussion?
that's it.
Okay. That takes us next to our second public comments statement time. This is the section of the meeting in which the public may make comments or share their opinions about Union City Community Schools. We ask you to limit your comments to no longer than 5 minutes per person to allow others the opportunity to speak. This is an opportunity for the board to listen to your concerns. It is not board practice to act on the concerns voiced during this meeting to allow for the board to do further research. Do we have any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move on to board roundtable. Does anyone have anything that they would like to share at this time? I do have one question, and that is, has there been any information discussed or talking about with changes in policies that have been put forth by administration? Do we have any concern regarding funding for our special ed teachers, since that comes via the state, via federal monies?
Not at this time, no. I'm not. I mean, obviously, with what's going on at the federal government level, a lot of things are up in the air.
Right,
And so I'm more concerned about, of anything, about Title I monies and
well,
what
there's
might happen
that
there.
too, but,
The allocation we get from the ISD to pay our special education teachers, the state gets funding for that from the federal government somewhat, but the state has the obligation to fund that, and it just happens they fund it through the ISDs. And so from that standpoint, if something happened to federal dollars, the state would have to come up with additional funds to support that. Now, might we be expected to share part of that burden if necessary? We might be. Might they go to our voters to ask for a millage for special education? Who knows? I guess that's possible. But like I said, I'm more concerned about the title money
yeah,
and what might happen from that. But I think with all of these changes at the federal level, at this point, you just kind of have to hold on to your hat and wait and see what happens, because it seems like it comes down randomly on, one day it's this department, another day you're
Right.
hearing this announcement,
right,
and things are being cut, and,
reinstated.
at some point, somebody has to realize that you can't just keep cutting things and expect everything's just gonna go on. It's magical thinking to think that, instead of, I'm all in favor of taking out real waste and fraud and those things. I'm all in favor of that. But it's just magical thinking to say, well, if you just cut it, then naturally the waste and fraud will be gone. Well, of course it will, but all the good stuff will be gone too.
Right.
So it's the intelligent person wants to know, where's the waste and fraud and where are the good things, and let's make sure we're only eliminating the waste and fraud. That's what has to be done.
Okay, thank you. All right, if there's nothing else, at this time, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Motion carries. We are adjourned. Thank you for attending. Oh, yeah. I sent it around the side of the table.